the other day, why don't you have a cell phone? You know, I can't live without a cell phone. I would not be able to live without a cell phone because I have a 2-year-old, and I have so many people text me all the time, and she randomly gave me her number, which I do thank her for. But the thing is, point being, if I had a cell phone, I'd probably be dead now. I'd probably have myself made away with because of everybody that I had to deal with and how many calls I used to get. In 2009, I had 500 calls from people who just wanted to be on a show. I was crucified. The things that me and Bob had to go through are things that were unimaginable, and just be thankful that you didn't have to go through it. That's why I don't have a cell phone. That's why I do everything from landlines and Skype and conference calls and stuff. That's why I don't have one, because I know that I would be crucified from the cell phone. I was in Winnipeg in 2007. I was in Winnipeg for 2 days. And I had people, when I was going through the most difficult time of my life, with my mom passing away from cancer, I had people in the summer of 2007 when I was in Winnipeg calling me, wanting me to host WrestleFest on my dad's cell phone. Like, we had to go through so much shit. And we sit here and we talk about it, and people just don't realize just the shit that we had to put up with. This is probably one of the best Jonathan Clarke commentaries that you'll find, because we've talked about so much, and I've been so honest about stuff. The shit that we had to put up with was unreal, and only we can tell people about that. You can take it for what it's worth, but it was an utter nightmare when I look back at it. It really was.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, here's one. Here's some breaking news for you. I went to the old site of wrestling-radio.com, which is now Wrestling News Source. Mm-hmm. Here's a little something. Kevin Nash arrested after a fight with son Tristan. Merry Christmas. Huh.
Wow. I think that actually was posted on my. I saw something with Kevin Nash on my news feed. Because my news feed. The good thing about the HEW Entertainment Facebook page is, if you subscribe to us, you get news updates every half an hour. And I read about that, and I was like, my God, you know, Kevin Nash, a guy who held the WWE Championship for 358 days.
The worst.
His own son. What is wrestling really worth? You know, people are so obsessed with wrestling, and this girl that I know Noelle, you know, she's a big fan of what I do. Herself and her boyfriend followed my wrestling shit now for months, and she wonders why I'm so pissed off about professional wrestling. It's because I had to go through stuff with professional wrestling that you only hear about. You did not endure what I had to go through with professional wrestling. You don't know what me and Bob had to go through for about 20-odd years between the two of us. We had to go through that shit. Because we wanted to be involved with it. We wanted to be, we were what you would call marks back in the day. I'll lower us to that level for a minute. Because we wanted to be a part of it. Bob shot on Deborah Marshall for years about the steroid thing, and then I managed to find Deborah Marshall. I hunted Deborah Marshall down through her cell phone number, and me and Bob both interviewed Deborah Marshall on the steroid issue because we wanted to know about it, because we were just diehard fans of it all. You look at wrestling and you say, wrestling's fake. Wrestling may be fake, wrestling may be staged, but the shit that we had to put up with and the shit that we found out about is stuff that I hope that you never find out about. I hope that you never witness somebody that you interviewed a week ago drop dead 6 days after you interviewed. We were, in 2008, October 28th or 2000, and I think was it 10? Yeah, October 28th, 2010. Me and Bob hosted so many shows with Michael Porter, only to find out that about, what was it, a couple of weeks after we interviewed him for probably the 15th, 100th time, he dropped dead. I hope you never have to go through that. I hope you never have to sit on the fucking phone and do a memorial show for somebody who was a good friend of yours. Yeah, wrestle may be fake, but the stuff that you had to put up with in it is ridiculous.
Oh, man, yeah, I'll tell you, probably some of the worst things, you'll ever deal with. Yeah. Oh. It's just Pyro Ballyhoo is the name of the name of the site that you can find Chris Cash on. By the way.
Oh my God!
Doing that with Vince Russo, and even hanging out with Vince Russo on his video show on YouTube. It's just that's what he's doing now. I'll tell you, some of the things that just really go on, with some of the things we dealt with. I'll tell you, the most, one of the biggest places you're going to find yourself fighting for professionalism from are going to be places that you'll normally never get it or see it. I mean,
you know why? Because we did stuff that they didn't. That's what it amounted to. I got the Stone Cold Steve Austin interview, and the reason that you were on that, Bob, is because I put you on there because Phil wasn't going to put you on there.
Yeah,
the thing was, we produced the Stone Cold Steve Austin interview, me and Bob, and the thing is, because we did that, because me, you, Phil, because we did that, we'll never get the credit for it because they didn't do it.
Of course, Phil, that's another name. You talk about someone, I told him, I remember Phil trying to tell me what was what, and this guy was looking at everything for grandeur, including the benefit we were going to do for Michael Porter, and boy, did he mess that up, to where I told him I don't believe he had that Ernest, the cat Ernest Miller, and I forget the other person, really, were starting off donations of $300 and $500. And, this guy kept calling me up with every complaint about something, and it turned out a couple people who I was dealing with at the time, really, he was really playing an instigator for an argument, and turned out he was doing everything he could, using their names just so he could screw over J.T. Evans. And, finally, when I found out he was the tweener in the whole thing, which he showed how stupid he was, I'll get to you in a moment. We won't hear where this one goes. That he told me how he was going to blackball me from wrestling. I said, who are you going to blackball? I said, did Steve Austin and John Bradshaw Layfield interviews you had? I said, I was the only one in the chat room. I said, the dark match could have 0 as far as the guests go, as long as Wacko Bob, Rick Ryder, and at the time, Beautiful Ben as MVE Fan Forever. If those 3 names were in the chat room, where we're hosting a show, I said we could have 30 to 40 people in the chat room at one time. By the time the show's over, we're already in the hundreds.
And the reason the JBL and Stone Cold Steve Austin interview got over, me and Bob produced half of that fucking interview. I decided the panel. Phil was the only one negotiating with the interviews. I decided the panel of people between Bob and Michael Porter, because an hour before the interview, like the night before the interview, Phil was calling me freaking out because he didn't know if Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to be showing up. I said, Phil, if Stone Cold shows up or not, it's Stone Cold's decision. I mean, that was like the 6 days before, what was it, WrestleMania 26, 6 days before Shawn Michaels retired. If Stone Cold Steve Austin was not going to show up because Shawn Michaels was retiring and that's bigger than your show, that's all you can do. Shawn Michaels was my idol. That was the biggest thing going on at wrestling at the time. And then he was asking me, do you think that Michael Porter should be on the show? Do you think Bob should be on the show? Well, Phil, that's it,
For those that don't, the thing that people don't know is, I wasn't on the show interviewing Steve Austin. I just showed up. I called in after Steve Austin was already interviewed. That's what a lot of people miss. I didn't go on there to talk to Steve Austin. I called in to contribute to the show and talk about the Porter belly flop. I wasn't starstruck about all these things. I remember when we were going to do the joint thing with Miley Cyrus and Miley Cyrus and Billy Ray Cyrus, and that thing was was getting ready to happen, and I just remember that, and I said, whew, I almost wanted to tell Jonathan Clarke, I mean, let's not have the unrated hour involved in this one, because this one was going to be about the more balanced, more family-friendly, at the time, Wacko Weekly. Plus, I had a kids show running at the time, and there were going to be some kids on. Of course, who complains about that? Phil.
what was ironic about that? The only ones that reached Disney because of me were you and me. We were the only ones the whole time that set that whole fucking thing up.
I know.
That was the only one who reached Disney at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the only one who got a response from Disney the only one who got a response from Disney when everybody else was preached it up was the man who gets a hold of everybody, who gets a hold of the impossible. The most impossible people that you think that we can't get a hold of, I get a hold of. And the only reason we got to the bottom of it was because of Bob and myself. And the only reason that JBL interview got over was because I carried the whole interview. Me and Michael Porter.
And Phil was talking about such a claim to success, and he thought, and when he got found out for being the tweener in things, and what he tried doing with Blog Talk Radio to really screw over JT Evans, which they found out later on when they really investigated it. JT Evans never once hacked into his BTR site, so JT Evans got things back. The only one who got screwed over